Thank you so much for hopping on set with us. This isn't the first time you've covered the passing of a pope, so what are your reflections right now?
I mean, John Paul II was the most titanic. I mean, this guy was iconic. He was the first to travel. He added so much personality in life, combined to take down communism. You talk about a guy that transcended politics and the papacy. I think it was him. And then the extraordinary moment when Pope Benedict says, hey, I'm alive, I'm okay, but I think it's time for me to step aside. And when he steps aside, you think about how conservative he was and how traditional he was. He was the biblical scholar. He was the one to go back in history. He was the one to what he thought would be even less mainstream, more mainstream than Pope Paul II. But when he steps aside, he's replaced by this Pope, Pope Benedict, who really wanted to change things. He didn't like the opulence. He didn't like the gold. He didn't like the fine dining that comes along with that role. And then you think about what he was able to do and really focus what he says is on the poor. And he was a big critic of President Trump. He has been in the past. He was extremely critical of our immigration policy. He had less than a 5-minute meeting with JD Vance less than 24 hours ago. He thought when it comes to climate change, that was something that he really wanted to focus on. And obviously, that's never been a priority here. But you can't think about anything. But in the terms of a human being, he's as good as it gets. He gave his whole life for other people. He gave his sole focus to the poor. When he got to this job, he didn't use it to consolidate power. He used it to disperse it. And I was just speaking to Father Jonathan over here, and he just reminded me, too, of some of the things that he brought out was, hey, you know, when it comes to same-sex marriage, well, let's think about that. When it comes to having people get divorced and have their second marriage in church, let's consider that. And when it comes to even priests marrying, maybe that's something we should debate. There wasn't necessarily a plan how to do it, but it was, let's think about these things. But many traditional Catholics thought, including your previous guest, I'm not sure I'm not sure that's where the Catholic Church should be heading, which leads us to the next 2 weeks. We're going to decide which way the Catholic Church will head when half the College of Cardinals were appointed by this Pope.
Yes.
You wonder if they think like him.
That's right. And less than an hour ago, Vice President JD Vance posted on X, I just learned of the passing of Pope Francis. My heart goes out to the millions of Christians, of which he is one, all over the world who loved him. I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. But I'll always remember him for this homily he gave in the very early days of COVID. It was really quite beautiful. May God rest his soul. And God certainly is doing just that. But it must be very interesting to be JD Vance right now and thinking I was the last public official of the level that he reached to meet Pope Francis yesterday. And at that time, during that meeting, he had no idea that we would be sitting here talking about this today.
Absolutely. And he just became a Catholic recently. So he's oftentimes, I find just personally, anecdotally, when someone converts to Catholicism, they become the scholars. Almost like new immigrants. When they come to America, they know history better than people that were born here. So he really dove in hard on it. And of course, he gave, he's sparred with other people in the past, and he always speaks his mind. He's over in India now. But I think it's going to be very interesting over the next 2-3 weeks, because at 88 years old, after spending weeks in the hospital, where we thought this sadly was going to come to fruition earlier than this, there's sadness of his passing, but there's really billions of Catholics around the world wondering what direction are we heading. And I'm just wondering, do you go into the United States? Because now finding out the rules, and I'm reminding myself, if you're over 80 as a cardinal, you don't vote in this.
I know, there are age
it's so interesting, right?
Yeah.
So is it smart to put a 70-year-old in that spot? Or should they be contending? Because if you talk about a personality, somebody that really understands the church and loves all people, that would transcend the position. I know I'm biased, but Cardinal Dolan, a few blocks from here,
that, yes.
I mean, he says, maybe his last time would have been the perfect time. The Benedict would have been the perfect age when Benedict got named. I'm not sure if there's bias against America with the College of Cardinals. But if anybody really wants to put a face and a personality behind the #1 religion in the world, most populous, it would be Cardinal Dolan.
Hello. So good to see you. God bless you and good morning. How are you?
Find yourself.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Happy Easter to you, Father. Wonderful. I know you've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
Grazie, padre.
Anche buona Pasquale e vice.
Grazie Santo Padre.
Thank you.
These are for your children.
Okay, thank you.
These are the gifts. These are also gifts for you as well.
Thank you. It's
The
beautiful.
Vatican tie, and then the rosaries for your wife, the white for your children, and the red one is for the red.
Molta santità.
Thank you very much for your visit.
Of course. And thank you for seeing me. Pray for you every day. God bless you.
Io prego per lei ogni giorno, che Dio la benedica. Grazie Santo Padre.
Happy Easter. Happy Easter.
Fox News contributor Jonathan Morris joins me now. Jonathan, it is remarkable that this Pope passed away a day after Easter, a day where he was able to give the traditional Easter blessing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. He rode around in the Pope Mobile, which was the first time he was able to do that since his hospitalization, and met with Vice President JD Vance. It's almost like he was driven to take part in this last Easter Sunday before leaving this world to be with the Lord.
Carly, it so reminds me of the weeks, the days leading up to the death of John Paul II. We'll remember, so many people remember John Paul II, a beloved Pope. I think Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, all recognized in John Paul II a great leader. And he was in the hospital on 2 long stints leading up to his eventual death. But he left the hospital, he came back to the Vatican, and the world watched his last days. And he really taught us that it's okay to be sick. It's okay to get old. It's okay because, especially according to the belief of Christians around the world, it's just a transition into a new life. Pope Francis worked very hard to get out of the hospital. He wanted to get out of the hospital. The doctors have said that 2 times he was in a life-threatening moment and they were able to revive him.
Wow.
He made it back to the Vatican, and he broke all doctors' orders, say whether that's a good thing or bad thing. He broke the doctor's orders. They said 2 months of convalescence, stay away from people. We're watching him in the Pope Mobile. This happened just yesterday, in which he went through St. Peter's Square, greeted the faithful. Imagine hours later, he met his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and he met with prisoners, which it was very important for him to do on the week leading up to Easter Sunday, Holy Week. And to hear that he was ordered to stay away from people, that's not in his DNA as Pope. He's somebody who wants to bless the sinners and anoint the sick, which is what he did to his final days. And there are time-honored traditions that take place after a pope's passing. So what will take place in the days and weeks ahead that will see Pope Francis through his funeral and the selection of a new pope as well?
Right now, the Holy See, the Vatican, the Catholic Church is following a very strict protocol. The Camerlengo made the announcement of the death of Pope Francis. That happened earlier this morning. Then the Camerlengo goes over to the papal apartments, which he was not living in the palatial papal apartments, but rather he was living in a very simple little hostel,
And he
Santa
chose
Marta.
that when he became the Pope.
That's right. And so he was living basically in a little hotel with lots of other people, but he did have his own room and his own apartment. So the Camerlengo goes and seals it. It's very old-fashioned.
What is the Camerlengo?
He's the one who now takes over some of the executor responsibilities, in which he makes sure that the papers of the Pope in his apartment cannot be touched. He makes sure that nobody can get in and take photographs of him in a way that would be disrespectful. And together with the College of Cardinals, which means all of the cardinals, many of whom Pope Francis himself elected, they will be in charge of running the day-to-day operations of the church. But no big decisions are allowed. Right now, no big decisions. The Secretary of State is not running the Catholic Church. He has to step down from his regular duties. And it's a very strict protocol to make sure that nobody in this period, without anybody in the seat of Peter, is able to make decisions that will significantly affect the Catholic Church or the other many activities that the Catholic Church is involved in throughout the world.
And Pope Francis reached his position in a unique way, because usually it takes the passing of a pope to elect a new one. It was the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI that led to Pope Francis being selected. Usually you don't have two living popes at the same time, but many will remember that major news story when that took place over a decade ago.
I remember it very well. I was getting ready to go on vacation, and I got the phone call from Fox. Is it possible? Is it true that Pope Benedict has resigned? I said, I can't imagine, but yet, you know what? He did write about that. Pope Benedict XVI saying that he would be willing to step aside, something that hadn't happened in centuries, if it came to that. Many people asked themselves, and the media asked out loud, will Pope Francis also step down as he got very sick? Pope Francis said he would be willing if he thought that that was the best thing, but obviously he wanted to stay in to the end, and I'm so glad that he did. Honestly, it's such, listen, a lot of our viewers have had different opinions of, how Pope Francis ran the church, right? He was definitely a more progressive pope. The Catholic Church had conservative leadership for decades leading up to this. Pope Francis was working very hard to make some significant changes, but you know what the biggest lesson he gave us was the simplicity of life, his humility. And yes, he had different opinions than a lot of us on a lot of things, but let's be very clear. Pope Francis lived a genuine life of humility and of service, and nobody can take that away from him.
You know, Jonathan, I'm glad you said that, because like we had just reported, the Vice President, JD Vance, met with Pope Francis yesterday. And the Vatican said after that meeting, an exchange of opinions took place concerning migrants, refugees, and prisoners. And we can all read between the lines as to what that means. Political ideologies were different between Pope Francis and the Vice President. Pope Francis has been seen as a more progressive pope. So what would you say to Christians who are conservative that are struggling with that in this moment?
It's so good that we have somebody in the world saying, take care of the poor, take care of the immigrant, take care of the prisoners, and just leaving it at principles that's basically the gospel. Right? The Beatitudes are very, are very clear. Blessed are the humble, blessed are the simple, et cetera, right? Blessed are those who mourn. And Pope Francis laid out those principles, and he fought for those principles, but it's up to government officials, including JD Vance, including President Trump, to then make policy. And that's very difficult. And the Catholic Church allows for difference of opinions of how to apply principles, eternal principles, into policy. And listen, so I'm glad that there was a frank exchange, and I'm glad that JD Vance said what he thought. And JD Vance became a Catholic not too long ago, in 2019. He converted to Catholicism, and so he has great respect for Pope Francis. Many people were saying, look, the Pope is dissing him by not receiving him into audience. And it was actually just yesterday during Easter service that Pope Francis invited him to have this meeting. Pretty amazing.
It truly is, yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us this morning as you help us digest this news of the passing of Pope Francis. You'll be with us all hour, so we thank